From the BBC World Service, in association with ABC and Akashvani, this is Stumped.
Hello, I'm Eleanor Oldroyd and welcome to Stumped. I'm joined by Jim Maxwell for the ABC in Sydney and Charu Sharma is in Baroda for Akashvani. Now, it's been another eventful week for England's men's test team. They beat New Zealand by 115 runs to record their first test win since their dreadful Ashes campaign. But that has been overshadowed by events off the field. Following the win, Ben Stokes and Gus Atkinson were involved in an incident in a London nightclub, which has led to both of them being dropped for the second test and Joe Root returning as captain. Well, Stokes and Atkinson broke the team's midnight curfew and they were present when a member of England's security staff was struck by a Saracens rugby player. Now, Jim, we lived through that dreadful Ashes campaign. There were a lot of conversations around England's ill discipline off the field as well as on the field as well. We talked about what happened in Noosa. At the end of the series came the news that Harry Brook had been involved in an incident in a nightclub in New Zealand, in Wellington, before the series even started. So we know that they've got history, this England team. But in general terms, what do you make of the idea of professional athletes being subject to curfews?
Something out of the ark. Get rid of it. If these guys or girls, and in the case of a lot of women's sports, don't know how to play the game, as it were, aren't responsible enough as professional athletes in most cases, well, then, they shouldn't be there. So if you step out of line badly, well, out you go. So, no, I get rid of the curfews. And I think we'll see after this little bit of botheration that's going on that at some point Stokes will be there, because he's not going to be there for many more years. Maybe the Ashes will see him out. So, yeah, it's a bit of an aberration. It's a lack of discipline, whatever you want to call it, in the way that he and probably Atkinson reacted to having a bit of a night out and overplaying their hand. But no, I don't think curfews serve any useful purpose anymore. That takes me back 60 years to being at school. I think we've grown up a bit since then.
The trouble, though, is, Charu, isn't it, that we mentioned the fact that, England were under such scrutiny and such pressure after the ill discipline around that Ashes series. And Ben Stokes is part of the management group, or part of the leadership group, which actually said, well, we are going to impose a midnight curfew. And Brendan McCullum said, nothing good ever happens after midnight. And so at the very first opportunity, Ben Stokes himself is out after midnight. But I mean, do you agree? Do you think that something had to happen, that they had to take some action had to be taken, that Stokes was obviously going to be at the very least not picked for the following test match? Or do you think, like Jim, that people are just going a bit overboard on this?
Well, how about early amnesia for the leadership of English cricket? They themselves, of course, have put on this curfew. But I agree with Jim completely. I think they're all, they're serious adults. They're some of the best sports persons in the world. And they're not, youngsters either. So for starters, the less rules that surround the team, the better, really. You've got to treat all these people as adults. When you're in the ground, there's a certain manual that you go through in terms of the training that, of course, you follow. Apart from that, it's your own life, and lead it to the best. If you cross legal boundaries, you're no different than any other individual, and therefore should be treated with whatever rules exist or laws exist. But apart from that, really, you manage your own life. And for a sports person, ultimately, it's all performance. The only currency of a sports person is performance. So as long as that is in place, I suppose behavior is very individual. We're not all, sheep. Everybody doesn't do exactly the same thing. We're not exactly the same kind of people. And we've got to allow that individualism to also be a part of your sporting journey. His absence from the English team, I think, just to rap on the knuckle, I suppose, no more by the management, because it's up to him, really. If he feels that he's sliding down a path that he can't recover from, well, that's his problem. But if it's an individual situation now, and an isolated case, then surely if he feels I can contribute much more to English cricket, he should be there and bear the responsibility and come back and perform rather than hiding. So no curfew, not much in terms of, more than a rap on the knuckle, and let's get on with it.
I mean, my personal views are that, we can be in danger of going over the top, perhaps, of being massively judgmental. You look at a team that wants to celebrate together. You see actually during the Ashes series in Australia. I mean, Jim, we'll know that the England players were under a lot of scrutiny. I mean, every team that's touring is always under a lot of scrutiny. The Australians, because they were winning, they were able to go out, have a drink, celebrate with their friends, and nobody would ever have said anything about that. And I think there's also a big difference between going and drinking if you've lost, or in the case of Harry Brook in Wellington in New Zealand, actually going out drinking before a game has even been played, and going out and celebrating after they've actually won a test match, which was a great relief, I think, to everyone. But I do think that the problem is that if you say, right, okay, we are going to hold ourselves to a higher standard of behaviour because we're on the naughty step, as it were, after what happened at Noosa, what happened at Wellington, then it's just, the optics are not good. It's not a good look to be, exposed as being out drinking after a self-imposed curfew exactly so soon after the test match finished. But then, I mean, who knows? We don't know the details of what happened on that night out. We don't know what the altercation was, what was involved in this scuffle. But we are where we are, and Joe Root, who thought it, is back as captain. 4 years after he gave up because he just looked like he was fed up with captaining the team after one win in 17 games, I think. I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that Harry Brook is the vice captain, and ordinarily you'd expect that he would be bumped up to being the captain, but no, it's back to the safe pair of hands, which is Joe Root.
It's good. Yeah, I like the fact that Joe's in charge of the side while this little brouhaha episode gets pushed over in the next week or two or three and we move on. But at least they know they've got someone who's responsible and sensible enough to manage it, hopefully without having to have a curfew of any sort, as we've been saying in the last few minutes. I mean, if you don't know what the responsibilities of being a professional sportsman are these days, well, go and play marbles or do something else. But Joe Root's a good, steady hand in charge. But we've still got a bit more of Ben Stokes to enjoy, I am sure. And after all the flick and flack that's been going on in the last couple of days, let's hope it just settles down and we move on. And he's there looking after the side and playing still some very good cricket, at least till the end of this Pakistan series, if not beyond.
I mean, I think if Harry Brook had been named captain for this test match, Charu, it would have felt like, okay, we're into the next stage. We're into the post-Stokes era, as it were. Even although it would have been difficult for Brooks to sit there and face questions from the press about not getting into trouble in nightclubs on the basis of what we've just talked about what happened in Wellington. But do you think, okay, this is an opportunity for Ben Stokes to maybe just pause, have a think? Joe Root takes over for this test match, possibly the final one of this series against New Zealand at Trent Bridge the following week, and that we will see Ben Stokes back as captain for the series against Pakistan.
The latter part of what you've just suggested, I think the optics wouldn't have been quite right had Brooks been elevated to captain at this point of time with this kind of an incident. So Joe Root's just the perfect choice. Even if it's an interim choice, it's the perfect choice. And yes, we haven't seen the last of Stokes at all, unless he sort of, introspects and says, I think I can't really offer much to cricket anymore. My body or mind can't take it. And we've had problems with, cricketers and their minds, and they've stepped off the field. But he is a very strong character. And not just for what he's done in the past, but as Jim Musa suggested, I think he has a lot to offer for the future as well. So just a little sit back, just a little thought, and maybe counseling, which is my favorite word. I think I've said it 1,000 times and Stumped. A little bit of counseling, saying, where are you going with all of this, Stokes? Because, you have to be and look like the leader that we want post that Brooks incident. And you're far too valuable to us, to England cricket, and perhaps to world cricket, to be stepping down because of an incident such as this. Stepping down because of bad form, fair enough, that's your call. But I do think that he sits one match out and there's a lot of counselling and fresh thought into what are you in the game for? If you're here as a leader, as a role model, for heaven's sake, let's get back to that. You can't always guarantee a 100 in a test match, but you can more or less guarantee good behavior and therefore good leadership. So maybe that has to be instilled once again into him and many other such sports persons around the world. He's not an isolated case, but I feel for him with all the pressures and this, that, and the other. But on the other hand, you can't really condone this kind of behavior for sports persons unless there was some provocation that we don't know of, and we don't know all the details, as you mentioned.
Well, I mean, I personally feel that Joe Root was in some ways England's only option out of the team they've got playing at the moment. At least he's guaranteed of his place in the side. Currently, they weren't going to bring Ollie Pope back because he's been the former vice captain. He's not in selection contention at the moment, and Joe Root will say bring a calming influence, I think, on the dressing room. And Jim, final thought really about Ben Stokes. I mean, we've seen the ups and downs, haven't we, of Ben Stokes's life and career, going back to that series in 2017-18, which he missed because of another nightclub incident in Bristol. That's nearly 10 years ago. I mean, I've loved watching him as a player. I felt actually mostly sad on that Monday when the news broke about this latest incident, because I thought I don't want this to be the last we see of Ben Stokes as an England player, as an England captain, because he's given us some thrills, hasn't he, over the years?
Oh, he certainly has, and he could deliver a little bit more as he goes. He offers something unique and special, and you don't get leaders, sportsmen of that quality all the time. So let's get the best out of him while we can. I mean, the old mantra, going way back before the days of mobile phone scrutiny, shall I say, was basically, if you play up, make sure you don't get caught. But that's almost impossible to do these days. So we've moved on to a kind of maturity, but there's always going to be someone going off the rails a little bit. As long as it's not a capital offence or something, just get on with the show, please. And let's not worry about it too much. Yeah. So that's the way I see it.
It's going to be interesting, isn't it? It'll be very interesting to see Joe Root back with his blazer on, going out to toss up at the Oval on Wednesday for the second test in what's already a really interesting series. So we'll look forward to that. Well, that's it for Stumped for this week. Join us again next time. My thanks to Jim Maxwell and Chari Sharma. Make sure you like and subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss an episode. Until next time, it's bye for now.